July 1955, I was walking my dog Benji in nearby woods. I let him off the lead and he ran on ahead of me. After a short while walking in and out of the trees, I heard Benji barking. I called out to him and tried to find where he was. When I saw him, he was standing looking at the entrance of a cave, continuously barking as if someone was in there. I grabbed Benji by the collar, then bright coloured lights began to flicker inside the cave. Benji broke free from my grip and ran towards it, but just as he reached the cave entrance, he disappeared, vanished into thin air. Confused and bewildered, I ran into the cave, where for just a few seconds, through the flickering coloured lights, I saw a strange looking creature. Then the lights stopped and the creature disappeared. I looked round the cave for Benji, but there was no sign of him. There was only one way in and out of the cave. I looked closer at the dark dank walls. They had several childlike markings and pictures of what looked like UFOs, alien-looking creatures, and pyramid-shaped drawings. Later that evening, I received a visit from a man who said he knew where my dog was. He was dressed in a smart black suit with highly polished shoes and a black trilby hat. We sat down in the living room, and after chatting for a few moments, he pulled out a coin and asked me to stare at it in the palm of his hand. After a few seconds, the coin began to blur and wobble, then disappear. He said the same dynamics had happened to my dog. At that moment, lights shone through the living room window, and the man got up and said it was time for him to go. As he reached the door, I asked him, "What about my dog?" He just looked at me and smiled before opening the door, letting in a blinding light. Then I heard the sound of a dog barking, and Benji came running into the house, wagging his tail. After greeting the dog, I looked outside, but the bright lights had gone, and so had the mysterious man. One summer's night in the year 1974, I was lying on my bed, tossing and turning, finding it hard to sleep, when all of a sudden a small black hole appeared above my bed. I sat up and peered into it. Through the darkness I could make out reptilian eyes. I asked what did they want. Their eyes blinked and I heard a soft telepathic voice in my head, saying they meant me no harm and that they merely wished to show me another world that exists beyond ours. I stood up and poked my head through the hole. It felt like my face was pushing through something soft and moist. When my body was all the way through, I could see two luminous creatures glowing in the darkness. The air was comfortably warm and soothing, like a warm summer's breeze. The creatures both held an arm up, pointing with their fingers, gesturing me to look. When I looked down, I could see planet Earth rapidly becoming smaller. I was standing still, but there was no surface below me, and although I was standing still, things were rushing by me. First the clouds, then the moon and the stars, then huge planets and colourful clouds of dust swirled and rushed by me at rapid speeds. This lasted less than a few minutes before all of a sudden the atmosphere around me slowed right down, almost to a halt, like watching everything move in slow motion. I was slowly descending through shimmering lights, falling softly, until I realised I was staring at the black hole again above my bed. Within seconds the black hole disappeared, and I drifted into a deep sleep. I woke up in a hospital in the summer of 1975, 1 year after I had climbed through the black hole. In the summer of 1984, I watched helplessly on as my young son got run over by a car. He was in a critical condition for days in hospital. On the 8th of July, on the way back home from visiting my son in the hospital, I saw a UFO. It was silver and saucer-shaped and hovered above my car. The very next evening, I received a call from the hospital telling me my son had took a turn for the worse and that I should go to the hospital straight away. On my way there, in the very same country lane spot, the UFO returned. This time the car engine stalled and I came to a slow stop by the roadside. As I stared up at the UFO, a gentle telepathic voice inside my head told me that everything was going to be okay, that my son was safe and not to worry. Then a figure suddenly appeared standing in front of the car headlights, and I found myself getting out of the car and walking towards it with no control over myself. Standing just feet away from the creature-like figure, a telepathic voice told me that I was to go with him into the spacecraft. I resisted this action and tried to run away, but my body felt paralyzed. I began to feel weak and drowsy, and all the time I could hear the voice in my head telling me everything is going to be okay and not to worry. Then I must have passed out. I woke up in my car in the same spot on the roadside. It took me a few seconds to get my bearings. Then I thought of my son. I turned the key in the ignition and quickly drove on to the hospital. But when I got there, my son's bed was empty. I inquired at the reception, but they said there was no record of my son ever being admitted to the hospital. Worried and confused, I raced home to find my son safe and sound in his bed, with not a mark on him. Then I noticed the date on the day's newspaper. It read July 5th, a day before my son had his accident.